come back, we'll continue with the discussions. We're waiting for the Finance Minister. Ken Ofori-Atta will be appearing before members of Parliament. We're bringing to you the 2018 budget statement of the Republic of Ghana. Do stay on. We will be right back.
Roland Walker there at Parliament House, crunching the numbers and going into the issues with Mr. Clement Appak-Busa, South Member of Parliament, Dr. Gideon Boaku from the Office of the Vice President. This is our coverage of the Budget 2018 reading by Ken Ofori-Atta. In less than an hour, the Finance Minister is expected to read the budget. So we'll be going into some of the key achievements that from government that they say they have made in the past fiscal year. But we have a sneak peek into what we should expect from the budget reading today. And I have with me in the studio, as you know, General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, Edward Kaiwe, who will be helping me go into some of these issues. So, Mr. Kaiwe, welcome again. Do I say welcome? we are here already. But as I said, from what we are picking, we will be expecting to see that the Vice President, well, the Finance Minister will be reporting that there's been an improvement in business confidence in the past fiscal year. There's been stable power supply, and that we are currently exporting to Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, and Benin and of course we are currently exporting to Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo and Benin are in the pipeline for us to export there. There's relief for commercial and domestic consumers of energy. That is a reduction in tariffs and interest rates to come down. We are targeting single-digit interest rates by end 2018. Same for inflation. We are targeting single-digit inflation by end 2018. The energy debt to be paid down to free commercial banks to lend to the private sector. Of course, this is being done through the energy bond, which is currently being sought from overseas. Very controversial issue. We'll be going into that. Importance of e-registration to improve ease of doing business and attract foreign capital. So the e-registration of businesses is also something that is being introduced by this government. Mr. Kaiwe, we've been through some of these issues, but looking at these hints that we are getting, I know a lot of it is outside your sector, your home ground of agriculture, but a lot of it affects you directly. For instance, if the commercial banks are freed, we can have more farmers going to the banks for loans, no?
Well, it's not necessarily the case. Much as it is good to, free the commercial banks from unnecessary loans that are being owed by government, using the ESLA bond to address that. Now, the intention is that, well, the assumption here is that once the commercial banks are liquid, then they will necessarily borrow to,
the private sector.
They will necessarily lend to the private sector. And when we talk about the private sector here, of course, that is where the banks will lend to, but it's not the entire private sector. You should understand that we are building an economy and we are making some selective areas to start with. Not that the other areas are not important, but as you can see, the government is trying to focus on agriculture. It's not saying services is not important, but as it stands now, they are focused on agriculture. Now, will the banks necessarily lend to agriculture, players in agriculture, because they are now liquid? No, because lending itself has got so many other requirements, which until you get the banks to ease those requirements, even those in the agriculture sector will not still be able to access it.
Okay.
So it's not something that it will automatically happen. It's a necessary, step that the banks are liquid.
Now, one of the major, and sorry to step in here, but so that we don't lose track of that point you made of requirements of persons who go and borrow money. One of the things that are barring, for instance, farmers from getting money from these formal banks is the fact that the economy is not formalized. So if you were to go to the bank today for a loan, they would ask if you're a salaried worker. Because if you're a salaried worker, they know your salary is coming, you're working, and place you can be tracked. This is a case where we are getting a digital addressing system, and we are getting a national identification system. And as part of these two policies, the Communications Ministry has hinted that there will be a re-registration of all SIM cards. It's expected that all of this information, when it comes, should help you so that you can be tracked by the banks easily, and they can lend more confidently. Don't you think that, coupled with these policies or these initiatives, the freeing the liquidity of the financial sector would, in the long run, help you?
Well, I'm not saying it will not help, except that whenever you implement a policy, you want to have the maximum benefit of it. You do not want the policy to be decided on its own. You know, you have an objective, you need to teleguide it. You know, there are latent benefits to a policy, and then there's the main objective, which you intended for. And I'm saying that if that is the intention, then you need to put in place other structures, you know, to ensure that it gets there. Now, if you look at the re-registration and all those things, it's even important because I want to be known as a Ghanaian. I want to be traced. I want people to know that if there's a problem here, they know that I am here, and therefore they should come to my aid. I want to be identified, you know, so that is important. But it's not only for the banks, but I'm saying that the banks have their own reasons why they lend. And like I said, the private sector, if the banks have got bad loans, we need to break down those bad loans and see who has gone for those loans. It is not the farmers, those small farmers who go for 5,000, 10,000, who are the problem. Huge monies have been taken from the banks, and they don't pay them back. And they are not farmers. They know them. It is not the address system that will identify those people. Well, those people are aware. They are walking on the street. They are still doing business with the bank. Well, and then they owe them.
Well, non-performing loans is something that we must look at because it's something that is crippling the financial sector. But we'll come back to that. We understand that the former Deputy Power Minister, John Jinapor, is on standby with Roland at Parliament House. Let's go back and hear what they have to say.
We're here again. We're giving you live coverage of the presentation of government's budget and economic statement or outlook for the year 2018 by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta before Parliament. And we expect him to be walking onto the floor of the House in the next 45 to an hour. We hope that we can also give you a lot more of the preview, just like we've been giving you. We have here seated with us the Member of Parliament for Bali, and he's here. He was a former Energy Minister, Deputy, and John Jinapor is here. Thank you for joining me, John. All right, and energy had been a bane of Ghana over the last 4 years, but we've seen positive stability of power this year. That should be attributed to good management of the energy sector by the Akufo-Addo-led government, would you say?
Well, we had a very positive stability in 2016.
We did?
Indeed, in 2016, there was no load shedding. We had redundancy, we had enough capacity, and we kept putting on more generation. Because the challenges had to do with two fronts, generation and the finances of the energy SOEs. As in terms of generation, even the budget acknowledges that we added close to 1,000 megawatts in 2016 alone. This year, as I speak to you, the car power budget of about 450 is also in the country. And so it tells you that within a very short space of less than 2 years, through our effort and initiative, we brought on board about 1,500 megawatts. And today, Ghana is even signing a memorandum with Burkina Faso to export power to Burkina Faso. It also underscores the fact that the assertion that Ghana's power is the most expensive is false. Because if our power is the most expensive, Burkina won't be buying it, won't be exporting it to Burkina. If Burkina is prepared to pay for that power, which means that we must then put up a markup or a margin on it, it means that we are doing quite well. The other thing had to do with fuel. Last year alone, we imported about 600 million worth of fuel. This year, that is not the case because the 10 fields are on, the Jubilee fields are working, and we expect the Sankofa, Jinyamin, Tommy fields to also come on. So it means that moving forward, we're going to be much more reliable, much more reliant on our own source of indigenous gas, which means that we won't spend more money importing crude oil. On the contrary, the finance side, which we took very positive steps to address, I think that this government is retrogressing on that aspect. One is that we had come up with a model to repay the debt in 5 years. They want to do it in 10 years. And even in that 10 years, they are only dealing with 60% of the legacy debt. Because the 6 billion they intended raising, albeit unsuccessfully, it was supposed to be for 10 years. So that meant that there was a gap of 4 billion. We don't know the plans, the programs that government intends using to deal with the 4 billion. But more disturbing is the fact that even as you deal with the existing debts, this government is piling the debts. And this year we expect close to 2 billion cedis of fresh debts. Ghana Gas is supplied gas of worth about $300 million. They haven't been paid one peswa, a peswa. We owe fuel providers. We're still compounding the debts with the utilities, both from the distribution, generation to transmission. And so rather than dealing with the problem in a comprehensive manner, it would appear that we are dealing with the problem in piecemeal manner, adopting a firefighting approach and compounding the problem. This government has been very, very lucky. In the history of this country, this is the only government that has had the highest level of crude oil production since we started oil production. This year alone, we are getting the highest number of barrels. Last year, we got only $247 million from our crude production because crude oil was at an all-time low. Production in terms of volumes was also low because of the turret problems, and we spent so much money repairing the turrets. But this year, we are generating more, crude oil prices are better, and that is why you are seeing a positive growth rate. But when you split the growth rate, and it's always important that we do that, deal with the oil sector and then minus oil, because it's the minus oil sector that really tells you whether you are doing well or not. That is not favorable at all. And so we're going to subject all this to scrutiny. We're going to look at them and offer constructive criticism. Where we ought to comment, we'll comment. The final issue I want to deal with is with the deficit. The deficit simply looks at your revenues against your expenditure, based on commitment basis or on cash basis. If you look at cash and commitment basis, this government has failed to roll out several of its promises. 1 district, 1 factory, 1 village, 1 dam, 1 million per constituency, all the other programs you can talk of. They have failed to implement them. And so simply put, if you don't spend, you have a positive deficit. So you are seeing a positive deficit not because there's been some magic, not because there's been so much prudence. It's only because government has decided not to spend. It's as simple as that.
Is that not prudent?
No. If you don't build factories, if you don't construct roads, if you don't construct hospitals, if you don't construct schools, you are debasing the fundamentals of the economy.
Well, that is true.
And eventually you have a major challenge.
Real tent. But if you don't throw all your macroeconomic indicators out of gear, it also puts you on a certain sound footing for the next financial year to be able to realign your expenditure.
That's why.
What the normal interpretation would be.
That's why you must have an integrated approach. Not just look at the macro, but the macro must translate into the micro, and that there should be synergy.
Yes.
That even as you are doing well at the macro level, it should translate. For instance, in the year that you're able to export a lot of crude, you might think that the growth rate is very big, but then the fundamentals are still very, very weak. And so we ought to be concerned about the fundamentals. And that for me is critical, because that is what will create the jobs. If your oil sector is booming, is growing, it's the Talos and the other companies that stands to benefit that much. It doesn't really generate the needed jobs that you need in the agri sector, in the fishing sector, and all those other critical areas that employs the mass of the populace.
And we've seen the criticism against the previous government, a government in which you were part, that many of the agreements we signed as far as the IPPs are, we didn't do that with an intention for having value for money.
It's false. It's false.
And what has been at the forefront has been America.
There's a stalemate. Why can't they take a decision?
You tell me.
1 year down the lane.
You tell me why.
Because it's propaganda. Because it's false information. Because people have already made up their mind that they must find faults even before they come into government. And so they are nitpicking, they are fishing, they are net dragging and patrolling, looking for information. But I can tell you, America supplies 20% of today's generation capacity. It's one of the most reliable, there's value for money, and we insist that there's nothing wrong with the America deal.
If we have to go forward as far as managing what we have as far as the capacity is, and now we even want to extend our supplies to Burkina Faso, it also means that other intentions of expanding, let's say under the SHARE program, which was should also be ongoing, shouldn't it?
Certainly. We must have an integrated approach, look at the fuel, and even bring about efficiency. That is very, very important. This government is piling on the debt and still promising to reduce tariffs. When they finish, I will tell you that it's a Trojan horse, and I'll prove to you that, look, you and I should not expect any reduction in your electricity tariff.
Okay. So we have to take a break, and we have to take a break because Mr. John Jinapua has to go into a caucus meeting. But in the meantime, we're still bringing to you live coverage of the much-awaited 2018 Budget and Economic Outlook Statement from the Finance Minister. And so we expect him to be in the next 30 minutes. He will be on the floor of Parliament, and that will be tabled as a motion ultimately. And then when we're ready, they will call the Finance Minister to also come in, to also have the Budget Statement and Economic Outlook read before Parliament. And of course, we are bringing to you live coverage of the event. We've been looking at a lot more of the discussions and the previews. We've been speaking to various members of the other side of the political divide, but also experts. And we also want to have your views. On Facebook, we have, well, we're streaming live, our page, Join Us on TV. We also have a Twitter handle at Join Us on TV, and we have a channel on YouTube. And the YouTube channel is My Joe Online TV. Good morning to you. I have a guest here. And, well, we will want to introduce him very soon. And, well, as we do that, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have a lot more for you. Do stay on.
Order 140, it's only natural that I perform that simple task of seconding the motion for adjournment. But, Mr. Speaker, having listened to the Finance Minister, whose revenue after paperless is 35% compared to the vice 56%. Mr. Speaker, we have heard his shopping list of realizable and unrealizable pledges and promises. A challenge wage bill with additional 100,000 jobs for graduates. Very well. Mr. Speaker, this is honorable majority.
Mr. Speaker, some of your colleagues on my left side want to taste a bit of your own nice way. Mr. Speaker, I'm familiar with the chorus. The minority leader started by saying that he's familiar with the rules of the House. Indeed, Speaker, I draw your attention to when a motion has been moved, because he started by saying that he's aware of the rules of the House. So let me draw his attention to the relevance of this task that he is engaging in. If you want to second the motion, may you second the motion. If you don't want to second the motion, there are others in the House who are minded. And in Yako, oh my God, Mr. Speaker, we have seconded the motion.
Coverage of the 2018 budget here live from Parliament. So just a while ago, you had the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta actually presenting the 2018 budget from an Asempa budget he called last year to the Ejuma budget. So a quick recap in terms of the macroeconomic target. More of a moderate economic growth, 6.8%. Let's look at revenue. They're looking at somewhere around 51 billion Ghana cedis. Expenditure around 62 billion Ghana cedis. Inflation end of year about 8.9%. Deficit still within the program 4.5%. They were quite heavy on tax incentives, despite the fact that India promised that they might be a little bit slow with respect to taxes that they will actually give out to businesses and all those things. Now, in terms of the electricity tariffs, they've also announced, or he also announced, that there will be some recommendations to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission to actually reduce tariffs, looking at between 11% to as much as 21%. And if this proposal is actually accepted by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. Also, in terms of taxes for those low-income earners, there will be some reliefs given to them in terms of taxes being paid on your income. Also, in their efforts to encourage businesses to actually pay their taxes, there will be some reliefs or some actually given to these businesses in terms of more voluntary contributions, so that those sanctions that are given to businesses that delay in paying their taxes, they might also waive it. The minister also spoke about the fact that there would be an educational fund in addition to the GET fund to support the funding of education. Why is he doing this, or why is he saying this? Well, he says that there have been some proposals from some development partners who want to actually support our educational program. And basically, the fact that it's believed that this educational fund will actually complement the GET fund as well. There were other initiatives announced in terms of de-risking the agricultural sector. You know, the one thing that has faced the agricultural sector in terms of getting the required funding is about the risky nature when you go to the agricultural sector and all those things as well. So these are some of the things that the minister has been highlighting in the 2018 budget, call it getting Ghana to work, or in the local language, they'll talk about the fact that Ejuma budget. But my colleague Odelia is in the public gallery in Parliament. And Odelia, over to you for whoever you have over there in terms of picking his or her thoughts on the 2018 budget.
Chief.
Government shouldn't be in the business of employment, but it looks like there's a lot of employment that has been mentioned in the budget, and that's quite worrying. Can they deliver on this?
You see, that is another aspect. On the other hand, the same government is crying for compensation, high levels of compensation, and at the same time, we want to employ. I think the private sector government mix is the discourse is not yet properly aligned. And I think that maybe with time, they'll be in a position to streamline that. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. So I want to find out from you exactly what you think about the budget.
This is more of a fantasy budget, a budget that doesn't appear pragmatic in any way at all. If you start by looking at the theme of the earlier budget, sowing seeds for jobs, as we had in early 2017. If we look at the Asempa, so-called Asempa budget that was a mid-year review budget, as against what we have today, you could see clearly that there is no correlation in the themes for this budget.
But it's not just about themes, it's about delivery.
Of course, it reflects in the delivery. It manifests clearly, form and content. And I'm coming right to the content. It is just unsustainable in a situation where, particularly, I took a few notes in some of the things that were delivered. In a situation where, one, we have a high arrears that we are unable to meet. In a situation where we have increasing debt stock. As at the beginning of 2017, the national debt stock was around 122 billion. As of June, it had increased to 138 billion. So at a time when debt appears to be increasing, and where we have a situation where in 2018, we are talking about a budget deficit exceeding 10 billion, and where government is proposing to finance this debt through, local financing, through our local banks of about 70 and over %, where we are crowding out the private sector from borrowing. We are increasing expenditure by way of talking about 100,000 jobs. We are talking about decreasing, of course, electricity bills. Who would not appreciate decreasing electricity bills? But you could tell clearly that in a situation where revenue appears to be going down, where we are not able to meet annual revenue targets. We saw what happened last year in the mid-year review, where budget revenue was reduced by about 1.1% over. And then we are having a situation where government is unable to sustain expenditure. Now, look at NIB and Exim Bank. We are talking about developing and having a national development bank. When we have NIB, we have the Exim Bank, and we are talking about.
So for you, it's basically a couple of duplications.
Duplications. Beyond that, we have the Agri Development Bank, and we have a budget talking about Exim Bank to grant agri credit. I think that this is a very confused arrangement, and we need to delve deep into this budget. I'm rather very disappointed. This is a very fantasy budget. It is an unpragmatic budget. It is unrealistic, and we are just tickling ourselves and laughing.
Well, we're handing over to George Riafe. We would be right back here at the public gallery to be discussing more with a few more dignitaries.
So welcome back to Parliament for our coverage of the 2018 budget. A while ago, we had the Finance Minister present the budget, which he christened as the Ejuma budget, getting Ghana to work. Let's get the minority view on it. Mr. Wakilu, he is a member of my Parliament for Damango. You raised several questions before this presentation. Are you not satisfied with those policies that government has outlined to help consolidate the gains and then grow the economy?
Thank you very much. It's evident that this budget is a wahala budget. It's a 419 budget. Per the statistics it has given, you'll realize that this year, 27, he was choosing and picking. And that tells you what we are heading towards in 2018. For example, if you say there's a real GDP growth of 7.8 and you go and pick June figures, then there is a problem. Because that is about 4 months away. At least a budget should capture from September onwards.
current government is saying that it's going to be a grant. It's never going to be a grant. But let's hope that such monies will come into the country to enhance whatever program that the government has for the people.
So, in general, what do you think about this budget that is putting Ghana back on track?
Well, every budget is an attempt to put Ghana back on track if we sort of derail. I think this particular budget is very ambitious. There will be few challenges, and basically there will be more challenges than before. But certainly, I believe that the people of Ghana are looking at a budget that will serve the people, not the people serving the budget, as the economy, as we've known. So let's look at a budget that is going to provide us the opportunity, provide the people the opportunity of the economy serving the people, but not the people serving the economy.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of tax cuts, especially when it comes to the energy sector. There's a lot of promise of employment. 100,000 graduates, students who have graduated from the university are going to be employed. Should government be leading the employment drive when we're having serious problems with public sector wage bills?
I think what government has to do is actually making sure that the private sector has the conducive kind of environment to employ. 100,000 is quite ambitious up to the year 2018. It's very, very ambitious. Let's hope they achieve that target. That is why I put it in a nutshell that this is a very, very ambitious, budget. There will be too many challenges, but certainly we are looking at an economy that is going to serve the people, but not the other way around, people serving the economy. So let's hope that it will happen. But I think that government should rather make sure that the private sector has the conducive environment to making sure that they employ more.
All right. Okay, so I think I've got some more people to talk with. Thank you very much. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're welcome back to our coverage of the 2018 budget, and we have the former chair of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Mr. James Kloche Aveji. Thank you so much for joining us here in our budget coverage and budget watch of this one that was done by the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. You have christened this budget 419. They are saying that it's a Juma budget. What is the basis of your view on this budget that it's 419? That's a serious allegation, some would say.
It is 419 because most of the initiatives that have been indicated in the budget, this government will not fulfill them. Just as the 2017 budget, where a lot of things were said, where they have decided to choose and pick those easier ones. And so all that they have said in this budget is just a repetition, a rehash of the 2017 initiatives. And that is why we christen it a 419 or wahala budget. Because wahala in the sense that it's tightening the expenditure where the revenue is coming to, the estimate is about 52 billion. The expenditure is also around 62 billion, giving you a deficit of 4.5. This year, the deficit is 6.3, and they were not able to fulfill most of the promises and that initiative that they have started in 2017. So if next year you are going to have a deficit of 4.5% of GDP, then that would definitely mean that the door is being closed, and for that matter, it will be difficult for the budget to meet most of the initiatives that are stated in the budget.
But Honorable, some will say that let's look at the cycle of our financial year. Unlike previously when the budget was done running into the third month of the next year, look at the calendar. You can only work with figures up to July or September. Now, based on these numbers, aren't they being realistic with their targets and projections for next year?
No. We have the numbers that the minister himself is churning out from the budget. In fact, those that he's picking and choosing. For instance, the highlights here, you will see that the overall GDP is as at June. Then when you take the inflation, it's at the end of October. When you take budget deficit, it's at September. So he's picking and choosing which of these targets are favorable to him.
The Fiscal Service hasn't released the final updated figure for September in terms of GDP growth. Now, they would work with data that they have available. Don't you share in this same concern?
This is what we always do, that when the budget is coming to this house, the numbers that we turn out in the budget is always at the third quarter, September.
So that's the practice.
That's the practice. Why did he decide to choose June for overall GDP? And then for non-oil GDP, June. Why? Why did he decide to use inflation as at end of October? Because it's a favorable target being achieved. So he's choosing and picking that is so that the budget can look good.
Let me look to speak to your colleague for Secondia as well. They have described the budget as a 419. They described the budget as picking those cherries that taste nice and are good.
Not at all.
Why?
Because the figures that the finance minister gave Parliament today clearly is not picking and choosing. He's picked the headline to suggest that because the headline indicators was made reference to a June figure, the minister is picking and choosing. But if you look at page 2 of the document that he's holding, it says overall GDP grew by 7.8 as at June against 2 period in 2016. It is estimated to grow by the end of 2007, up from the original forecast of 6.3. Is there? So to suggest that the minister is speaking and choosing, with the truth.
When you look at the policy initiatives, with the 100,000 job proposed to be created, kind of contrast here because the same budget is complaining of the wage bill. So this job, is the government going to facilitate or the government going to create the jobs? Because actually this kind of government says they believe in the private sector. So therefore there should be a policy whereby will allow the private sector to come on board and they make sure that they provide the kind of job. But if the government is saying he's going to create the job, it's kind of confusing here. How is he going to create the job? Because we need a detailed explanation on what they meant by that. Because we know that this particular government says the private sector should be the engine of growth. So therefore, if it's going to be business is going to be established to absorb those graduates, or those graduates, their skills, are they meant for those jobs? I think the government needs to come out and explain very well how they are going to create those jobs for us. We'll be very glad if they can come and explain. Are they going to employ direct or not? I hope you understand. So let's look at how they'll come out with it and see. But I believe so far, so good. The budget is not that bad. Looking at the policies roll out, but there are so many questions to answer, especially when you come to one factory, one district. Still, they do not tell us exactly what type of dam are they going to construct, because we have a lot of dams.
Thank you. Doctor, please, we're ready for you.
Something that has not been done before. The pilot this year is working. So in this budget, we have allocated 400 million to the central bank for them to give cover to the commercial banks, agricultural development, NIB, Ghana Commercial Bank, to land to agriculture. So that is...
Hello.
see pages of notes on the budget. We'll take just a 1-minute comment from you, then we'll go to the University of Ghana campus to hear from Sheila Tamaklo, who is there gathered with some students. So Sheila, before I come to you, let me just hear a quick comment from Mr. Kaiwe on his general views on what he's heard so far.
Well, again, the budget seems to give hope, outlined a number of policy direction that has to be carried out within 2018. And that is characteristic of every budget. One of the challenges has to do with whether those policies will be carried out very well.
Okay.
For instance, I was expecting to hear that when the Planting for Food and Jobs did indicate that they will create 750,000, we would have been told that those thousands have been created, those jobs have been created. Now we have another 100,000 jobs that are supposed to be created.
Mr. Kaiwe, I hate to do this, but then let's grab another quick word for Mr. Hazel Atofos and the ranking member of the Finance Committee before we continue.
I say this because if you look at where we are going, we cannot end the year with 68% if you fail to analyze it.
Saying that all the reprofiling and all those things that you are doing would not work?
No, the reprofiling you are making reference to is refinancing, and it's only going to affect interest payment. It is not going to affect the debt stock. It is not, the stock stays as it is, and the stock should be recognized as such, and does not necessarily mean that you are going to reduce the debt stock. Let me also point to one point. If you are to about it, we mentioned that there's a possibility and that they should abort immediately in terms of the what we call the chop money tax. I'm proud and happy that at least the Minister responsible for finance listened to us and they have withdrawn it.
And clearly, you believe that your press conference forced them to withdraw, because the perception we had from your conference was that it was going to be announced in this budget.
I told you that they should abort it immediately. And today we are hearing that it didn't come. So they've aborted it. It's a clear sign that the government listened to us to a large extent. And you can see that if you look at the growth numbers, let me point you to one important point. The overall GDP growth for June, they estimated it to be 7.8. And they said that by end year, the growth is going to be 7.9, heavily driven by oil. You know what I see wrong here? Let me show you something. You are saying that it's heavily driven by oil. Look at the fiscal table. If you look at the fiscal table here, table 5, as part of the revenue, by negative 14%. So how can something that is underperforming by negative 14% drive that growth and you exceed your target? Inconsistency.
These are all projections and extrapolations that in terms of oil growth, are they actual numbers?
I am giving you in terms of the outturn as of September.
For September. I'm talking about going forward into next year.
I gave you outturn as at June.
Yeah, I am talking about the fact that aren't you convinced about their projections going into next year?
I'm not convinced.
Why aren't you convinced? Because several institutions, if you look at the World Bank, look at the IMF, you look at all the rating agencies, they have even forecasted a higher growth than what?
On the back of what?
Of oil, actually.
Yes, so I'm talking about growth. There are aspects of growth you talk about. You see, so it's important that you allow me to land.
I would allow.
So I'm talking of non-oil growth. They are projecting 5.4%. You are constraining expenditure to about 4.5% of GDP in terms of fiscal deficit. And you expect that to drive non-oil growth to 5.4%. Impossible. I don't know what are the drivers. So these are the questions that we are raising. And it's important that we raise the questions. But it's early yet. We are yet to go through the details. Hopefully, based on the information that I have, I'm not optimistic. I am not optimistic one bit. I see a budget that is empty. I see a budget that clearly that is not signaling hope to the ordinary Ghanaian. I say this, let me conclude. I say this because, one, our brothers and sisters who are importers of this country are complaining that as a result of introducing the paperless structure, the duties has risen astronomically. Today, we are aware that in the submission from the minister responsible for finance, he made a categorical statement that the economy has stabilized. So if you say the economy has stabilized, why are you keeping the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy? If you say the economy has stabilized, why are you keeping the 2% special import levy? It's important.
Just a brief second to hold on to get the Deputy Minister of
Yeah, now cross over to Sheila Tamaklo, who is at the University of Ghana, to find out what the persons there are saying.
And they're looking at stabilizing the macroeconomic aspect of the economy, looking at inflation, the policy rates that reduce, and how that the arrears in debt that they met when they inherited the government, it was cleared by a significant figure. I think the budget really did meet my expectation.
Okay, interested. So you heard from another person, well, the economic stability actually does play a key role here. So Daniel, back to you in studio. You've heard the minds and the thoughts of these students here.
Well, thank you very much, Sheila Tamaklo, for those thoughts that you gathered from the students. I'll come back to the studio and finish up with Mr. Edward Karewe, who has a few opinions of his own. Mr. Karewe, very optimistic students we have there.
Yes, of course, they are students, and I'm saying that clearly, if you're a student, the next expectation is that you'll get a job. So exactly. If you are being told that the jobs will be coming, and I'm not to say that I can't put my finger on the table that, no, the jobs will not be created. I'm only saying that those things have to be measured with our past experiences.
Okay.
And I've just cited the 2017 budget, which it talks about. I want them to come out clearly, tell us how those jobs have been created, whether they've been created or not.
There are even cases where we are told that jobs have been created. Remember the communique that said 600,000 jobs have been created in 2016? And workers in the sector were saying that they can't attest to that fact.
Yeah, so for the students, I think it's good news for them. It's also good news for myself, except that I would hope that it does happen. But we must all remember that, I mean, that is also even in line with our view as TUC. Government must deliberately create the jobs. But how those jobs are created is the problem. And the government has shown that this particular we are going to do A, B, C, D to create them. I'm saying yes, it's a budget. A budget is a promise. It is only at the end of the year that you know whether the promise has been fulfilled or not. And we have to also be very mindful that promises are not fulfillments. Okay. And again, we are also aware that we have had very good budgets giving a lot of hope to people, and yet it does not happen. So for me, I will still wait a little. Probably one needs to do a deeper reading of the budget and then to come out with an overall opinion on it. But I also welcome the fact that there have been some reductions in the utilities for residential and non-residential workers and so on, because those tariffs are high.
Yeah.
And
but of course, even with those, there are just proposals that are going to be forwarded to the PRC for the PRC to make the final determination.
You know, the assumption we normally place when a budget is read like this means it is done.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is the assumption. But that assumption will now be tested as we go forward.
Exactly.
And then you see that your assumption then comes to be wrong because it's not yet implemented.
So, Mr. Karewe, if you look at what we've heard, it was 2 hours. So there's a lot of information to process. But what are some of the key things that you would like to see done immediately to even stimulate growth in other sectors?
Well, the leakages. You know, what we just need to ensure that we deal with the leakages that are in the system. And also I've also heard that the wage bill is huge. They are taking steps to reduce it, and it has come down as against revenue. I mean, the proportion of revenue that it takes. You know, that is also an area which you need to deal with. And we have also been witnesses to yesterday what the prosecutors' bill that has come.
Yeah.
Immediately they should put it in place to set it up and ensure that people begin to know that, look, you can't have your own way. You can't do the wrong things and get it and get away with it. That also will help to address the leakages. There are some intended leakages that are supposed to come back with. That will serve as a deterrent. Not to talk about when it is properly it is implemented, they may end up recovering some of the bills. What is also exciting is that they've talked about the livestock area of agriculture, and that 200 farmers will be supported with 70,000 ruminants and so on. All those tractors are supposed to be provided within the period. We are talking about boreholes, and then the not exciting per se, but a little of information that has been provided is about the Village 1 dam. Now they are talking about 192 dams and duckouts, have been identified. Okay. But they're falling short of telling us how much it will cost, and whether these 192 dams are going to be dealt with within the year, and how much it will cost all of us and going forward. Again,
it will be dangerous to make that assumption that as soon as you hear the announcement, it means it's been done.
No. Yeah. Very, very dangerous.
Yeah. There was also, as part of the AAPET, the Program for Economic Transformation, that there will be the removal of some import duties on some implements that are going to be used in agro-processing and agriculture in general. When you go to the ports, do you see this as one of the major challenges that you face?
Well, when you talk about implements, of course, if they are necessary, and making sure that they actually get to where they are supposed to, because otherwise, when you are removing taxes, you have to be sure that you have the full benefit of it. Otherwise, you will lose revenue, and yet the full benefit will not come. And that is partly the case with the Abosakan tariffs. The spare parts tariffs. Because the spare parts never came down. And you also need to look at these tariffs vis-a-vis other policies in other sectors. Because there can be some countervailing policies that will undermine the good policy of one subsector or sector of the economy. And that is also what we need to be looking at. And in any case, the budget should not just be, because we have read it, we cannot do anything about it as going forward. That is why there's still an opportunity for the minister to come mid-year for a review. So when we are implementing and seeing that some particular policies are becoming a problem for others, we can choose between and see how we are going to modify them, and then so that we could synchronize them and have a holistic, benefit for the country.
I love the way you're taking it from a bird's eye view, and I want this to be I'll crave that you make this your final comments, that generally there seems to be a bigger concentration on agriculture. There's a Planting for Food and Jobs update. There was an update on the livestock program. There's also the Program for Economic Transformation. And even in this new building, National Nation Builders Corps, you find that there's an extension services module, which is going to go into that. So you find that there's a general focus on agriculture as a subsector. What advice would you give if you were to advise the Agric Minister now, so that we don't go wrong?
Well, first and foremost, when it comes to implementation, it's a different thing altogether. This is policy, and it can take some few people to make a very good policy. You need the implementers, you need more stakeholders in the implementation to understand the philosophy of the policy, to have a certain level of commitment. It's not only about employing people, it's not only about throwing the plans to them, it's about getting them to appreciate that, and then also ensuring that you provide the logistics that they are needed, and then the right attitude. I think all these things we are doing, I don't know whether we are fashioning out how to transform the attitude of the Ghanaian, because that is fundamental to all these things. And that could probably be the reason why previous good policies never worked, because they were put in a bad attitudinal atmosphere among the people. The people have got bad attitude. So you bring in a good policy, you put it there, and it does not work.
Well,
so we should be looking at that going forward. And I think that within the year, a number of programs should be
well, the values campaign has already been launched.
Yeah.
The last week or this week, the National Values Campaign, similar to the campaign against indiscipline by the Vice President Aliyu Mahama in the Kufuor administration. So let's see if that would pan out very well. Some people are a bit skeptical about campaigns like that, saying that it doesn't generally achieve much. But thank you so much, Mr. Edward Kairo, for joining us. He's been here with us since 7:30 a.m., I believe. It's about 2 p.m. So before we go on social media and find out what you have also been saying about the budget, let's go to Kumasi and join my colleague Prince Apia, Love FM's Prince Apia, to see what Kumasi is also saying about the budget. Right, Prince, if you can hear me, what is the feel in the Garden City after hearing Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta?
Yeah, Daniel Dazi, I should say that after the 2 hours a lot of people spent behind their TV watching Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta deliver the budget, it's been interesting, mixed reactions from a lot of people. But I should say that currently I'm at Idum, the Central Business District of Ashanti Region, Kumasi, and I'm with some business operators. We will speak briefly with them to find out their thoughts about the budget and whether their expectations were met. I have with me Daniel Ofosuhene, Enim, Joseph Akusi, and Franklin Nyakum. First and foremost, Daniel, what would you say this budget meant to you?
This budget for me was well articulated, well delivered. On the whole, if you look at the statistics that were given in terms of macroeconomics, and when I say macroeconomics, I'm talking about inflation, exchange rates, GDP, and interest rates. You look at all these things and you see that, yes, so far it's going well. So for me, it's a budget of hope. It's a budget of a challenge, and I believe we can do it. We can.
All right, so let's speak to Joseph Akose. First and foremost, your impressions.
Oh, in fact, I'm being impressed with the reduction of the electricity tariff. And the reason being that it will go a long way to reduce cost of production of industries. We know that electricity tariff forms part of the cost elements of the industries. And once there's a reduction, it's going to help them to improve on their profitability. And this will help them to even expand and thereby creating jobs for the unemployed youth in Ghana here. And the consumers are also going to enjoy similar reduction. And this means that their disposable income will improve. For that matter, even they can make savings, and our banks can also mobilize more, and also they'll be able to increase demand of certain goods and services, thereby growing the economy. You know, because when you talk about GDP, it's about output. As people continue to buy and the companies increase their production, then the GDP growth will increase. So that's good.
Okay, I have an entrepreneur here, Mr. Franklin Nyakum. What were your impressions about this?
Yes, first of all, the reduction in electricity tariffs is very key, and also the tax incentive for young entrepreneurs is also very, very key. Because if you look at it, if give young entrepreneurs the opportunity to enter into certain businesses and also give them tax holidays. I mean, it's not seen before, because what I know is that tax holidays are normally given to big corporate organizations, certain mining companies and things. But to give young entrepreneurs tax holidays and even to carry their negatives for 5 years, that is, I think, that is compelling. And I think that if it's going to be done, that will be very good. I mean, those are the things that really strike me in this budget.
Yeah. So I want to find out from you guys, finally, what were some of the expectations you were expecting that it would have been injected in this budget that was not done? Yeah, you, Daniel.
Expectations, sports. I didn't hear anything about sports, even though I stand to be corrected. I'm here to read the whole budget. But listening, I thought sports was left out, and if it had been included, and some policies spoken about, it would have been very good.
Okay, and you're a banker. Tell us
Oh, I was expecting that the national stabilization levy of 5% being paid by the banks will be abolished because it was meant to serve a temporary purpose. However, according to the minister, it has been extended to 2019 because no currently the banks are paying 25% corporate tax. In addition, they are paying this national stabilization levy of 5%, which amount to 30%. So that's affecting the bank so much. In this case, if it had been eliminated, that the bank will have used this free up money for expansion to invest in technology. You know, now we are living in technological era. Banks have to invest so much in technology. But I know the government also needs some funds to intervene in other social activities. So I think they also know what is best. So let's give them some time. Probably in due course, they will eliminate it so that it will serve as a relief for the banks.
Yeah, Mr. Nyako, what were some of the things you were expecting to be injected in this budget that were absent, I should say?
Well, I think that one of the things I was expecting was the reduction of interest rates by the banks, so that I was expecting to see something in the budget that would really force the banks to bring down interest rates. It was very, very key. So I'm yet to also go through further to see, but that is something very key that it will, give a lot of stimulus to a lot of businesses because our interest rates are really, really high.
On the whole, finally, has it given you some confidence as an entrepreneur?
Oh, yes, especially the electricity tariffs. Even my office, you prepaid. Just now, the thing runs, and you just have to go and buy again. So if you're going to reduce it like 14%, 21%, etc., it's going to be a very good boost for businesses. Yes.
Confidence?
Oh, I think it's not so bad. Human government too. They're also humans. Therefore, there's a limit to what they can do. However, let's be optimistic. I know Ghanaians many times tend to be negative. We're not positive. But let's have a positive outlook that in the end, things will be relatively okay. Because we are human. They are humans. They can fulfill all our expectations. So let's hope that things will be okay.
So, Daniel, are you going to sing the same chorus?
Yes. For me, I'll even rate the budget between 70 and 80% confidence level. For me, if you look at agri sector, a policy that has been initiated, insurance cover for banks, for them to be able to give credit to agri sector, it's a good boost. It tells me that government will really want to grow the agri sector and therefore inject into whatever comes from there into industry, therefore growing our GDP and the economy as a whole. So for me, it's a budget of hope. It's a budget of confidence. That's what I can say.
Thank you very much. So, Daniel, these are some business operators in Edu who I have been speaking with, and they are sharing their thoughts about the budgets read some few hours ago. So, you can take it from me to the studios.
Right. Thank you very much, Prince Apia, for that interaction that you've had. Interesting comments, particularly the marks they've been scoring Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Let me hand over or welcome, should I say the queen of social media?
Probably. I wouldn't reject that. Thank you very much, Daniel Dazi. I'm Ben Sabubedu, and this is a coverage of the 2018 budget statement delivered by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. And a lot of you have been sharing your thoughts with us on our various social media platforms. I must mention, Daniel, that we were live streaming on Facebook and interesting comments on the go. Let me just pick this one from Owusu Bismarck. He says, what has the bottled water done to deserve a turning point like that? It's suffering too much like Ghana's state. And he's actually running away. But interestingly, I don't know if you observed it, the Finance Minister kept turning the cup of his bottle to the left and to the right, as if he was opening it to take a sip, and then he closed it again. And I observed him for about 2 to 3 minutes, and he kept doing that, and he would stop and then come back to do it again. Interesting what people look out for while the budget statement is being delivered.
I noticed at a point in time, nervous reaction maybe?
Probably, I don't know. But Isaac Alvin says, the noise is too much. The minority listening to it well, so you don't come back and do a press conference. Very interesting. But you would expect, definitely, that the minority will boo or they would want to show some
placards,
placards, or show some reaction to whatever the finance minister would be saying.
An interesting clapback that I saw in there when the finance minister mentioned the 419 and used the scripture Philippians 4:19, saying that they are responding with the scripture.
And talking about scripture, he quoted quite a few.
Yeah,
we saw that the first time he went to Parliament. I think it's something he's used to doing.
A trait of
we should expect it more often.
Should we be saying Reverend Ken Oforiatta?
Well, I don't know. Wood Kofi says the minority have nothing to offer Ghanaians, so allow them to shout. And he thinks that it's quite hypocritical of them to do that. And Isaac Frimpong said the minority should discipline themselves. A lot of people I think around this time, as we were live streaming, the minority was making some noise. So you realize that a lot of the comments are on that.
But isn't it expected? I mean, with every parliament, the minority heckles the minister, heckles the president when he goes for the State of the Nation address. So I mean,
all right. So let me just say this. Tema Montana is saying, if it was Seth Tekpe, I would be snoring by now. He says that this one is not as boring, or this finance minister is not as boring as Seth Tekpe. So a lot of people commenting there, live comments on our live streaming on Facebook. And someone says, if he stands for president, I'll campaign for him in the future. Interesting. You see, it's interesting. See, while people are marking the figures and looking at how it balances with what's on the ground, other people are just looking at how he's turning
the cap of his bottle
and all those things. And Tema Montana, he's actually been commenting a lot. Ibrahim Gawusu says, the bottle, what is it with the bottle? So a lot of people seem to have issues with the bottle over there. But I must mention that we are also trending on Twitter. We were tweeting as the minister was delivering the budget statement. I tweeted, a lot of people were tweeting. But one tweet I came across, which was very interesting, this person was saying that this is routine. We're used to hearing the budget. We're used to seeing all of this. The minority opposes this, that, all the post analysis. But he just wants more. For example, he's looking for more in terms of more scrutiny, not waiting till you're hitting the end. But there again, others will think that if I've made a statement for a year, why wouldn't you allow me to reach the end of the year before you can analyze or scrutinize
Dennis, technically speaking, the budget is delivered around this time of the year. So, and the next budget will be delivered around this time of the year. So we would expect to see the result around this time of the year.
Yeah, I appreciate, but this person wants some intermittent review. I know we have the mid-year budget review, but he's calling for more. We'll just pick a few more of your comments. And Sheikh is saying, Mr. Speaker, intern nurses arrears unpaid, so say something about it. I'm sure this is a reaction to something the minister said. Dominic Nana JC Jr. Says, okay, I'm sure responding to someone who commented earlier. Charles Darlington says, nothing new, the same story, we'll do this, we'll do that, but on the ground, nothing happens, and
similar
that's his
to
opinion.
The comments Mr. Kariwe was saying, that we often assume that when it is read, for instance, that, we're going to have 750,000 jobs created, it means the jobs have been created. That's not the case. We have to go on the ground and track them and make sure that what they said they will do, they will do.
Sure.
It's a lot of work for us as journalists as well.
Interesting. And Dachihiri's entry says, Nana Bawumia is restoring confidence in our dying economy. Alex, be quick. And Saeed Ibrahim says, 419 budget on paper, the finance minister can keep reading, but we Ghanaians want it in reality. And he says again, stop campaigning and do the work. And Dachihiri's entry says, such a brilliant minister. You know, a lot of people are talking about his composure. You know, that look, especially when the minority or a member from the minority is making a statement, especially when Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu gave his comments after the minister delivered this. You see that look, he's just looking at him
Dennis, I think that the finance minister sort of has enjoyed the applause of social media for a while. Remember the whole hashtag Feel the Ken that came up with that speech he delivered earlier, and I remember that people were calling him Abolisher General after the first budget.
Exactly.
This one as well, he seems to have come out unscathed. I mean, social media is not really bashing him.
Exactly, and I think that's worth mentioning, especially looking at what was happening in the previous era, and I wouldn't want to go so much into that. But let's just see what's happening on Twitter. We'll pull Twitter up shortly.
We'll be going there soon. But I mean, I think that the reaction of Ghanaians generally on social media tends to have this sort of telling on, you know, what a government should do and what a government should not do. I wonder if maybe it's because social media makes noise and government seems to react. I don't know if that has a telling on it, because you realize that with the road toll levy, for instance,
it was a social media campaign.
Exactly. It was removed after a massive social media campaign. I don't know if that has any effect on how social media reacts to government.
Interesting. And I mean, I just remembered that there was this statement or claim made by the minority that there was going to be a tax placed on mobile money transactions. At least we know now that that's not going to happen, and everybody who had fears
will be relieved.
Exactly. We didn't hear anything on that.
The argument of Kazel Ato Forson when he was speaking to our George Weafe is that they said it, and so the government removed it.
Yes.
So, well, depending on where you stand.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, just a few more of your comments, and as you can see, Joy News tweets and replies. And we tweeted that we've provided reliable electricity supply, Ken Ofori-Atta, and the minority were not too enthused about that. They reacted.
Exactly. I like the look on
some of them exclaimed. Yes, and this one received a lot of commendation on social media. Masiasa was monitoring government to absorb 100% registration fees of BC candidates, and a lot of people seem to be enthused by that. One person like that, and we'll quickly wrap up here. We showed you more pictures, what's happening on the floor. We brought you live text as well. 2018 budget, we have achieved positive development in oil and gas. So that's Joy News for you, your most credible news source. If you haven't liked our page yet on Facebook, we are Joy News on TV. Same name, we'll find us on Twitter. Daniel.
Thank you very much, Bernice Abu-Baidoo. And I'm sure Aisha will fight with me for crowning you So what we'll do now is that we'll bring you some of the information that we were gathering as the budget was being read in a quick infographic version. So let's watch that, and we'll come back soon with some more. Stay tuned.